Hello, and welcome to a new series of interviews from Credit Union Product Strategy Network, or CUPS. We'll be highlighting products and people who are making things happen in the credit union universe. I'm Andy Wright.
I'm Derrick Ross.
Today we're talking to Shreenath Regunathan. Shreenath is the CEO and founder of Starlight. That's a benefits access platform embedded in banking apps and credit union portals. After a decade at Google building machine learning and data infrastructure, he's now building tools to support low-income Americans in times of economic struggle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you and excited to jump right into questions about Starlight. So just starting with, for people who've never heard of Starlight, can you tell us what problem you're solving and why is this problem especially relevant for credit unions right now?
Absolutely. So Starlight's solving a problem that we saw sort of emerge from both a bunch of academic research and also talking to low-income communities across New York, across the US over the last 3 to 5 years. And the underlying sort of core reason that Starlight solves is that cost of living is skyrocketing. Job losses are becoming more common, and gig work is 30+% of the economy. And so income variability is now the new normal for the members that credit unions have historically always served. And many Americans are struggling to make basic needs, and they don't always have a lot of places to turn. And meanwhile, federal, state, local assistance programs and resources are available, but there's a connective tissue that's missing in helping people access that money, get support when they need it, and support them in that time of need. Credit unions have very strong mission alignment and want to do this, but historically, the products we've offered, which might be traditionally loans, CDs,
Right.
checking accounts, are good, but they don't solve this immediate sort of cash shortfall to make your budget happen. And so Starlight helps close the gap. And what Starlight does is we proactively partner with credit unions to serve their members in improving their financial lives by finding out what benefits they're qualified for, which could be obviously government, civic, state, federal funded, or also nonprofits funded, or in some cases even private corporations like utilities. And the idea is that we are able to enable them to get an understanding of what they're qualified for, get assistance applying, and in some cases we even help with the application process for the members. And when we do that, they become more financially resilient and become much more loyal, sticky members with a long engaged relationship with the credit union. And the reason that this is very relevant now, and your question was about the now, is there's a challenge where we're seeing the financial institution universe between fintechs, banks, credit unions sort of fragment with more and more sort of point solutions for different reasons, which means that the historic member relationship with their one credit union is evolving very drastically. And so one of the big questions is, how do you build long-term trust, loyalty, and boost sort of relationship depth with every household in America? And part of that is that, the historic set of products and services that you offered have to evolve to what the future sort of world looks like, which is this complex web of services you use. And the credit union is actually a great relationship builder, deep trust already in the community. And it's almost how do we accelerate that for them? And so we see this now problem as both an institutional problem on the credit union side, but also from the evolution of technology solutions becoming more easy to embed inside services rather than creating a 50 app on your phone to do 50 things kind of problem, which users have already got frustrated with, and we can kind of help remove that complexity.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that makes a ton of sense. I, from a product side, it's how does it fit, right? It's not just as social impact work, it's not just foundation work. Why should credit unions think about benefit access as a real product strategy conversation versus the alternative of just, it's something nice to have. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel really passionate about it. So I appreciate you on here. But yeah, so why should credit unions think about benefit access?
I mean, the financial rails that government benefits come from is about $500 billion a year. It's a big part of the economy. It touches, during COVID, 99 million lives touched some form of federal assistance or state or regional county assistance program. So it's not the sliver of society that needs this and the rest doesn't. It's actually a pretty big part of our society. The other piece that's interesting is this is just money flow, and credit unions work in money and money movement, right? And at the end of the day, it's a big piece of what you do. And then the other piece that's kind of important is that, if you think about expense income and how you manage that and balance that, people are looking at their bank accounts being is this check going to clear? Oh, I got a utility bill. Should I pay it today or should I wait for 2 weeks for a paycheck to drop and then pay it? People are making these juggling choices on the exact moment which they're looking at the credit union banking app when they're logged in on the site. The other thing that's interesting is, you put on your next best product hat as a product leader. you're thinking like, what's the right next best product for my users? And across the membership, the answer actually is quite fragmented, right? For some, it might be the car loan.
Yeah.
For some, it might be a high yield savings. But for like 50 to 60% of America living paycheck to paycheck, historically, credit unions have not always had that answer. And so it's almost like we're solving a latent need that was expressed, but visible, but not solved. And then the more like pragmatic, sort of like business minded person will be like, well, if we increase the number of touch points per user per year, they're more likely to stay loyal with me for other product needs they have throughout life. And so more touch points that are high value and high NPS equals to higher stickiness equals to long-term retained members. And so that's like this very like sort of direct brass tacks version of it. And this already happens, right? We're not like predicting the future. It's like we know what loyalty does, rewarding programs do. We know why like, the Chases and Amex of the world have built ultimate rewards and membership rewards and built these long-term deep relationships. They have chase offers, embedded offers.
Yeah.
So you look at a lot of these things, even simple things like cell phone insurance on credit cards. It's become such a big thing because they realize that in the event you face a tragedy and you're present at that moment, that loyalty you built is really valuable. And Starlight's really just the same thing. It's like when someone is about to face financial stress and you know it, and you show up and help them, that is like a moment of really high trust risk, but also high trust value. And that returns like sort of in spades back to the institutional brand, but also to like that product value. And then the mission brand question also is, historically, when we've done social work or social impact work, it's giving to local charities and helping them. But there's a question of like, what is the like beyond the dollar impact you're having? And this lets you kind of be like, we obviously give money, but we also give you access to a way to serve your constituents who then might end up becoming members for the credit union in the future. And so it takes all of your existing relationships and say, how do I make them longitudinal and deep versus like shallow and like check writing? And that's like a way to take all the foundation and impact work and also add a lens of like, how does this become part of the credit union's overall impact and them becoming longitudinal members with me, bring their families, their friends, their cousins, and bring them all over. And so that's kind of why I think it's, it's a real product strategy question. And the other piece, which is probably much more like zoomed out for a minute, is what an FI does has evolved a lot. You look at SoFi and where they started to where they are today. You look at like Robinhood, where they started to where they are today. You look at Chime. You look at like vertical after vertical. You get JP Morgan Chase's product portfolio. Yeah. And you realize that like checking plus CDs plus loans was the past. It's not the future. And credit unions have done that to some degree, right? When you think about warranties, you think about like trust building services or trust and will work, or even like, LPL and wealth management. So we kind of started solving this for the wealthy. We just haven't thought about how to solve this for the low to moderate income. And so in a way, this ethos is kind of built into the credit union mantra. It's just not where they've seen a product-led version of solving this for every single slice of membership and how to serve them.
You mentioned something interesting now just about the diversity of credit unions, the diversity of the size of financial institutions. We are curious, in a particular deployment of Starlight, can you kind of walk us through the maturity path from sort of the entry-level ways you can deploy it to more sort of targeted, engaged implementation to like the what you're talking about with the completely embedded experience?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we've learned a lot in this process. Like, I come from obviously a technology background with about a decade at Google before starting Starlight. FIs have a very unique structure, right? You look at credit unions teams, like whether it's a lending team or a member experience team or a collections team or a call center team or branch management, or someone doing financial empowerment and coaching. Like they each come with a very different lens of how they want to use it. So we've actually learned a lot on how to build from our credit union partners and then be like, okay, that's a good idea. Let me go build it and come back and give it to you, right? It's like not often that we came in with the answer. We almost came in with like an idea and they're like, no, actually, that's not how it works. And you're like, all right, let's go back and fix it, right? And so the maturity path for Starlight in a way is immediately you're like, this is a resource your staff and your call center teams can like immediately offer a member when they call in and say they're struggling. One of the credit unions I met recently talked about how 5 to 10% of their calls are about people in financial stress across the entire credit union and calls. And that's like a very frequent interaction model, both on call center and also in branch.
Yeah.
And for those moments, historically, the answer was, well, I don't know what I can do, but there might be like an office across the street you can go talk to or like in the other part of town. And so instead we can be like, actually here, let me actually do this for you. So that's kind of like an immediate entry point, which is reactively to people in stress. Then it's like, okay, then we get slightly more proactive and you're like, hey, you missed a payment, you used courtesy pay. Can I bring this up to you in email, in text, inside your digital banking with like a card that surfaces inside banking? Is it available in a branch with a QR code above the ATM, like in the same like lobby as like where the staff is sitting? Could be a rack card. It could be postcards. Like, and we've learned from credit unions some really creative ways they marketed it. And so in all those cases, Starlight's basically a white label site that is not gated by membership. It's optional. Some credit unions have thought about doing it, but mostly they're like, we want to give it on both sides of the aisle, whether it's signed in or signed out. We want to offer it to all our members. And then what gets more interesting is you're like, okay, now let's get really proactive. And can I look at like signals in your account activity behavior and start to be like, yep, we send birthday messages, we send wedding messages. Can we do more? Can we then expand into like, hey, Shree, we noticed that like you've shown signs of financial stress because you missed a couple of recent payments in the last 2 months. Would you like help with some other programs that we can find for you? Brings you onto an on-ramp into Starlight, we can find stuff. The other thing is you can almost be like, hey, actually, why don't I just like run all of my members proactively through a data pipeline to like run them every week and see who are good candidates for us to reach out to. And almost like the holy grail at its end state where we're building towards is to say, hey, right under your transaction record for your utility that you hate that just went to a $400 heating bill in the winter, there's a link because you're already pre-qualified, like a pre-qualified loan, to say, would you like help lowering it? And then not just that, we also have filled in most of your form for you with your consent, with all of the data that the credit union has about you, and then says, hey, would you like to just verify this, complete it, and submit it? And then we'll check status and we'll get back to you and be like, hey, now that you saved $400 on the utility bill, do you want to put that in a high yield savings account? And can I help you do that? And like it becomes part of this like longer journey where Starlight is not in itself like its own standalone product. We're just an augment to the like 7 to 8 products you already have. And then you're almost taking members through a journey of like, what's the right one at each moment as they build a relationship with you.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. And just the way that you laid that out and talked about it, and you mentioned Google there, like, I think like, what did you bring from the previous product world that now translate? Now that you're a credit union expert, as you've been in our space for so long,
Expert is a grand word.
Hey, you're working on it, man.
Novice.
You're doing awesome. It's massive growth, and there's a lot to learn, and you guys are all on top of it. So that previous product experience, though, what do you think translates really well in the credit unions? And I know you just kind of gave that example, but maybe that or additional.
I want to frame this because it's a really important question, I think, to our audience, because so many of them grew up within the credit union ecosystem, and product experts are starting to kind of come into our ecosystem from the outside, and we're interfacing a lot more with fintechs. So we're really curious, like, what is your perspective as a product manager coming from the outside, looking in at how we do this with other products?
Yeah. I'll tell you a bit more about my part, and then I'll tell you what I've learned in the credit union side, because they're probably like different and aligned, but like there's a bit of learning curve for me, right? One is, one big piece I think a lot about is like systems thinking, where you like almost try to understand like all the key players at work and their motivations, incentives, permissions, which I think a lot about in terms of like data flow, like who can share information with what consent, and how do we make sure it's like full trust of the user that we're serving and making sure it's comfortable for them. So that's one piece of it. Like, I spend a lot of time on sort of this multi-party compute problem, which is like, how do you build ads measurement for a advertiser who doesn't have any data? It might be like Samsung, who's selling TVs at Best Buy and who's advertising on YouTube. And you're trying to give them measurement. And to build that measurement effectively is quite complex, because you almost have to be like, well, we have to compare Shree to someone who's just like him, who also lives in New York, has a similar income, has a similar lifestyle, not to someone who lives in a different city with a different family structure. And so you're kind of mixing this understanding of like demographics with predictive behavior to running like essentially scientific trials of running like an A/B test, being like, show 1,000 people ads, show 1,000 people no ads, who did what. And then you're building measurement with like data that you don't have. So you go into like a retailer and be like, hey, Best Buy, can I like find a way to work with you? Or like similar providers. Because you end up building sort of a ecosystem understanding of like, how's everyone behaving? What are the incentives? What are the motivations? What are the technical constraints? What are the legal constraints? And then you're being like, what can I do with all of this together to deliver tremendous value for the end user and support them in what they're getting to? And then that constraints, right? In this case, it's a lot of privacy and data constraints. There's also like technical constraints in like how you can move information around. And that becomes initially a frustration, but over time it becomes almost like a forcing function for you to build. And you're almost like, how can I build with this constraint? And then you start to build really innovatively given the constraints you're given. And then when you kind of bring that into the credit union world, you are like strapped for a variety of things, not to start with the fact that you're all like project overloaded. You've got like a base business to run, but you're also trying to innovate and build new things. You also, at the behest of a ton of vendors that you're working with, unless you're like, one of the top 15 banks in America, you're like partnering with like 50 to 100 vendors to get your services to your end members. And so that gives you a ton of constraints, but also gives you a ton of opportunity because you can be like, hey, how can I take these three players together and string them together to build a solution that actually delivers a member journey that's very magical, even though they might not need to know you're handing them off between three different partners. And that constraint kind of, again, becomes like not a blocker, but an opportunity. But that takes a little bit of a shift of frame where you're like, if I was just like me and 5 engineers with no one else and building a consumer app, I could build everything I want, right? And that's great, but like, that's not the world you're in. And that's one big piece. I think thinking about understanding like incentives and motivations and also how to like move information and user flows between systems is a big piece. The other thing that I think is very interesting is data and its value. Like, so Starlight's basic bet is we use personalization, targeting, and relevance, but instead of serving you ads so you buy shampoo, we're like giving you money so you get more money in your wallet. And it's like a great option. And so it's using the same design principles of like, okay, what insights can I gain to predict what you can get? What can I get from all these third parties that are like willing to offer programs for different people to say, who do you want? What are your targets? What do you need? And then like understand their motivations, if they're a utility or like an office that administers Snap in Washington, and like, what are they doing? And like, there's a program for like upgrading your home for like the grid to be more stable. And so they have some interesting motivations. Like they actually want to deploy this because the better we deploy it, the less like they have to like make the grid be fragile. And so you start to be like, oh, okay, so utilities are actually very motivated. Let's go work with them more. Like, and we can start to think of like, where do you find power and like sort of tension in the system and who can provide like leverage for you? And then when you think about data, it's like very interesting because like you're actually sitting on a wealth of information at a credit union because you have member trust. They bank with you. The spending is there. And in my case, I'm like, right now, we're making the member write it 6 times in 6 different applications because the government doesn't allow the data to move between these two systems. But can we build that like sort of enablement layer? And then it's like, okay, now there's a technology piece to it. But the technology is almost like not the hardest part, right? The hardest part is like understanding motivations and how to understand that alignment. And then the last piece I'd say that's very interesting when I think about product experience that comes to credit unions is a trust problem, which is that Google has the same risk where we've like shut down a ton of products, which are very interesting, but we're like, that would lose user trust. Let's not even bother. And so there's a lot of bets we would research and intellectualize or even build prototypes of. And in the end, we'd be like, the quality of search risk is high or like the user trust risk is high and we wouldn't do it. And that same mindset applies here because like, especially when you work with low to moderate income members, they're like default trust in financial institutions lower than rich people. But if you've helped them, it goes up very quickly. And so part of our goal is we have to be an accelerant to the credit union's relationship in their trust building, not like a risk. And so there's a lot of things I would love to do, which I'm like, well, okay, yeah, but that would risk our B2B2C relationship with our credit unions to get to their members. And so that piece becomes very interesting as a constraint of like mission alignment at scale. It has to be in like every micro decision you make in your product.
That's really interesting. I mean, it really is a unique relationship you're stepping into. And we didn't even get into all the regulations that make our industry unique. But I'm really interested in kind of going back to when we were talking about how you implement it and how it's white labeled. But it's kind of messaging driven, sort of data insight driven. How does it show up as a white labeled product? Is it like, as it's currently implemented now, is it mostly messages? Do credit unions give it a name or how is it presented?
It's a good question. So all of our credit unions have chosen to like almost brand it as they want to based on internal decision making from if they have a product leader, or someone on like marketing or retail banking or on like digital, if they have a head of digital. We've seen a variety of names, right? One of them calls it like Bridge Up because it's like part of the set of services that they offer. And their entire staff is trained to be like, oh, here's when you bring up Bridge Up, or here's how you like do an email campaign about Bridge Up to like the members in this branch or to the folks who just had payment stress. Another credit union did a voting contest among all of their staff to come up with a variety of names. And then they like awarded the winner like a gift card, for example, which is pretty cool. A different credit union saw it more as like part of a suite of product offerings they have in the financial health and wellness space. It's like called Pathways Resource Connector, but they have Pathways Coaching and they have Pathways to a variety of things. And Starlight is like branded as Pathways Resource Connector there. And so we found one, like white labeling is like a genuine goal because it's starts with a white label web page that's delivered through email, text, notification in English or Spanish, wherever the users are in a responsive site. But then it actually evolves to being like, we're now this quarter and next quarter, we're building into digital banking. So we'll be like inside your banking app for 2 or 3 of the major vendors. And then we're trying to add like 7 or 8 more like very quickly. Because the goal is like, for most credit unions, we're present where your member is.
Mhm.
And if it's in branch, we're like on your screen, we're on a rack card right next to you. If you're like virtual on a call center, it's delivered to you as part of the call. On like in one of my credit unions, it's like in the recorded message while you wait for someone to pick up the phone. It's like the 3rd or the 4th slot is like a little quick message about what Starlight is.
Mhm.
And then
That's cool.
if you're like in a chat relationship with someone, there's no screen. It's just like information followed by results to like a deep link to us through SSO where we can like link out with the right context. And it's delivered almost without any face to it. It's just the material is present, and then the member is able to like come in and find out how we can find them assistance, guide them to it, and get it. But I think the sort of overarching theme for the white labeling is it's important for it to feel and act and be a native product. Because an example is one of my credit unions, we've been like talking to them. They want to basically almost be like, this is one of the natural perks of membership when you use ACH and debit. And like it's offered to every member.
Mhm.
Because your activity guides us to find you more things. And the more you use our card, the more we find things for you. And it becomes like a virtuous loop of us building a relationship with you. It's like rewarding for the LMI, right? Like it's like if you think about historically, reward cards were only serving like the rich and the affluents. So then
Right.
you're like, what do we do for the rest? It's almost becomes, hey, maybe we can like find them assistance as well, right? It's still the same.
Yeah, I love
Right.
that. I mean, there's so much utility with it in general because it's obviously a great product for facing like the consumer side, right? Our actual member base. But I mean, there's so much utility for it just as humans in general, right? So like
Mhm.
internally as well, I think there's,
Big
you know,
fan.
for your employees of the credit union is kind of what I'm saying. It's like the tool can be up and down, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, in fact, one of my credit unions, they were like, hey, we love this. Can you build a
Yeah.
special version just for staff
Yeah.
where the data
Oh,
of
nice.
members who've used it is not visible to anyone internal to the company? Like Starlight team can use it. We don't want one staff member to see another staff member's financial
Sure.
lives.
That makes
So we
sense.
built
Yeah.
that, and it actually worked really well because now the staff can use it in a secure and private way without going to the HR and sharing their family business with them because they need help. And so we found that to be a pretty interesting use case. Again, it's one that like we hadn't planned for, but it became a really compelling use case.
Hmm.
And then the other one was we saw another credit union was like, hey, I want to go give this to non-members as immediate value before they've joined the membership even. And then be
Hmm.
like, now would you like to come in and join the credit union so we can do more of what Starlight does, but for more parts of your life as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different utilities that, the brain starts going because, most credit unions obviously are also really engaged in the nonprofit space and the small
Mhm.
business space. And there's, as an employee asset for a small business portfolio on your business side, there's so many different branches, right, that you can go with it.
Yeah.
It's super exciting. So what are some of the best build business cases, that are both mission driven and commercially relevant that you've seen that credit unions can help to like build the case for the product or bring it in or even bring it forward
Yeah.
from the product space?
Yeah. From a product perspective, I think of it as like a series of hypotheses and proof points, right? And so
Yeah.
hypothesis 1 is it's engaging, compelling, and drives member retention and stickiness. And we have some really good data from our existing credit unions with case studies about how it is probably in like 2 to 3x more engaging than most of the communications we send to our membership. It's highly valuable once they come through the Starlight flow and they're all
Hmm.
like really delighted with the experience they've had. So that's like instant value where you're like, okay, we drove engagement, we drove stickiness, we drove value for the members, and they have a positive recall back to the credit union about using Starlight.
Yeah.
That's like done, dusted, works. Then you're like, okay, cool. Now, how does that drive the rest of the value? Now, if you're like in a lending relationship or a conversation and you rejected someone, which is what credit unions do to 60% of their members every year,
Mhm.
that 60% of members are just facing a potential risk of like brand trust because they just applied, they got denied the car loan, the credit card, the unsecured loan that they asked for. How do you then immediately be like, but actually, here, let me find you something anyway? And then you're able to give them something compelling, bring them in the door, give them some value right away. It changes that relationship.
Yeah.
That's also very good, and we know it works, and we know it's a very valuable way to bring it. The other is that, we are seeing folks in like almost I call it like pre-collections journey, where like once someone's got payment stress, but you haven't like sent them and reported to the NCUA yet about like the risk you're facing, that's an immediate value where we're like, can we offer Starlight? as a immediate value to find you some assistance, sometimes even like emergency rental assistance or something like that, which helps you stabilize your home. Again, turning a very negative risk moment to a positive one. And so that is also very immediate. Now, where we are working towards is we're running a couple of pilots with credit unions to show how does that impact delinquency risk? How does that impact lending risk? 'Cause that's just straight like CFO communication material already, right? It's like, okay, cool.
Right.
We launched with Starlight. We saw reduced risk. It's a good idea for us all. The other is on the acquisition side. We just published a case study just a day ago where we saw that, across 3 of our credit unions, we could find leads who can convert into real members for far lower cost than traditional marketing channels. Because Starlight's a very compelling first product. And especially if you're like low income designated or aspiring to be, or if you're like CDFI and trying to continue and retain that, engaging and retaining the right product set to serve low to moderate income becomes really important. And this becomes a way for you to compete and be present for those members with the product that they need right now. When your high yield savings doesn't matter if they're living paycheck to paycheck. And then the last one, again, this is kind of like marketing related, is you talked about employers earlier. And it's a really big one, Derek, because like Chime and OnePay at Work, which is Walmart's bank, are both going after a ton of segs, which historically credit unions have owned and dominated.
Right.
But they're almost like losing under their feet because like the other FIs coming in, and especially the fintechs, are able to offer something more compelling to the employee. Not necessarily the employer, but to the employee's immediate needs.
Right.
Which could be like earned wage access, quick access to their earnings, 2-day advance payroll. And most credit unions now do 2-day advance payroll as well. But we're not marketing it as well as Chime does. And so part of the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is like, hey, one of the most compelling business cases is we help you restabilize your seg relationships and give the workers the support they need. Which, by the way, like as you look at the emerging economies of the US, it's like more and more households are qualified for assistance, but not getting it. Yeah. And so if we can like help them with that rising cost problem, it becomes again, hey, we're here, we're relevant, and we're solving a very urgent need. And then when we do that, like we're running a longitudinal study with a couple of credit unions where we're like, okay, our people who are engaged with Starlight on a consistent basis become more loyal to the credit union in general, in number of products per member, total LTV. And like, that's obviously going to be the most compelling answer. And like, we're working towards that as well.
Very cool. As you were talking about kind of how the product shows up in the online banking experience, it kind of reminds me of, I've been involved, Derek, I'm sure you have too, with vendors that present discounts and coupons. And it's that sort of dance of like, we're plugging this into your online banking. Yeah. We've got your data. We know what services you use. Might you be interested in this coupon? And it's never been, I don't know, that arrangement. I haven't seen it take off. And I sense that there's a level of discomfort of like, you're digging and you're snooping, and I'm not sure that the value I'm getting back is worth it. It's some of those are deployed really well, I'll be fair, but some of them seem to kind of test that relationship, test that trust that you were talking about, that you discussed and managed so well at Google. This one seems different. I feel like you're generating opportunities to share great stories, which is what every credit union wants to do. So I'm just curious, like, beyond Starlight, the product itself, how has working with credit unions, or how has this product kind of taught you about product management inside financial services? And I want to touch on another comment you made, that you have been working with digital product managers, lenders. What is it from your experience now that you've worked at lots of different credit unions? Who is the product person? Like, how is the setup? And how do you engage with them?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I would say it's a very like people-led answer, really. It's not like functional or org chart. It's about people and motivations and how they see it. Like we found people with so many different official titles who become the champion of like, what is the journey of a moderate income household through my credit union? And what are our products and services? Is there a gap? Like I came out of a meeting this week in Virginia with a compliance officer who's obsessed with thinking about how do we make our lives easier for the folks who are low to moderate income. And she was talking about everything from like changes in the product, changes in their compliance rules and thresholds, to changes in product offerings, to how they like journey map it. And other credit unions, the head of marketing was driving it. Another credit union, it's the chief strategy and operations officer who's driving it. And so we've seen like just honestly, just like a breadth of leaders who are stepping into that role of like journey mapping, especially in the absence of a mature product organization still in the organization. And I think it's also hard, and I respect and applaud you both and the community you're building, because it's a tough function to be in when you have functional owners and you're like kind of a bit of a horizontal and you're trying to navigate this dimension really importantly, right? You have like a lending officer, you have like a retail officer, you have a digital officer, you might have like a few folks in different channels. And then they're working across trying to be like, hey, what is the journey of a member throughout this process? What is the product management led version of this? And so my learnings so far are very much like you actually don't know where your champion lies. And you also don't know where, and if they've even sat and talked about personas and journeys. Like I've talked to some credit unions are very honest. They're like, no, Shree, we don't think that way. We're very transactional right now. We do indirect auto here. We do this here. We do LPL here. We do SEG activation here. And then once they arrive, they're like, cool. They go into the member file to NCUA once a year. And we know that they're in the areas file every quarter. And like, it's not treated as a cohort that I'm managing, right? And some of them are like, we're on the journey. We're just starting. We're in like step 1, 3, 5 of like this, like call it like an 8-step journey of what they're trying to do, right? And so I think it's less digital transformation, which was the buzzword of a decade ago, to now it's like understanding like sort of member journeys and seeing how to make the journey really smooth. And there are people who are doing it. It's just that I have found them to be like of all kinds of titles, right? And some it's like community impact officer. Another one, it's like a junior branch manager who's obsessed with it, who wants to run with it. And so we've seen a variety of titles of people who are motivated and interested. But what I think is the most consistent thing is when someone's able to center and think about, hey, here's an Alice worker. They're in my neighborhood. I understand the personality of who I'm serving.
Right.
And they're thinking about I have to action it. In a few cases, I've seen like really mature boards actually come in and tell this team being like, yep, we've been serving like rich workers of this factory, which is now shut down. We've got a community charter now. How are you guys going to serve the new population that's living here who are not making 6 figures and comfortable at 60? And like, it's a totally different demographic down the street. And the boards are guiding the exec teams, and the exec teams are guiding the board to like evolve their thinking of how do we serve the community. And some of them will go do listening sessions, then like kind of go from like vision and strategy down to a product strategy. If they do that, sometimes they skip it. And then they go to like, okay, what's our like execution plan to like reach them? And then I think the other piece I'll say, which is kind of interesting, just related to this, is credit union product management is a bit different because like, you know, the set of things people expect a credit union to offer is still fairly finite. It's like credit builder, checking, savings, high yield savings. But some people get creative, right? I met with a credit union that was telling me how they switched their entire rewarding strategy of how they give back their money as a nonprofit cooperative member-owned product to loans and getting better rates to rewarding debit card usage with points. Because they said it's a way to actually equitably distribute the money to more members.
Right.
Because if you look at which members got more money from my money I give back, historically the number over-indexed on rich people because it was in high yield savings or in loan rates. But if you then give it back in like debit card spend points and it went to like everybody who has a debit card with me, you kind of accidentally or deliberately actually reset who got how much from my entire membership. And so they were telling me this and I was like, that's a very interesting and impressive product, right? It's not a product in the traditional sense of a product, but it's changing where and how you tweak how you operate. And it's made a product that's much more compelling for members. Another credit union had a high yield savings of up to like, I think it was like 10% up to $1,000 just to get people early into saving. So like, I think there's a lot of creative, innovative product management happening. It's just not what Big P product might have been when I was thinking about it at Google, but it's still product management because you've like got an idea and taken it to live and launched it. And it's a brilliant idea because it serves a very important community need and helps your members deeply. So I think the biggest thing I kind of realized from that, which probably, if it's helpful for all of you, is that you're all doing far more than you probably give yourself credit for. It's just like you're comparing yourself to like a different industry and a domain where the product is a different structure than like changing your rate, which matters actually to the people you serve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges I had, or I have, I guess, in the credit union product space is when you talk about product management, it's so variety of based, like you were just saying, all those titles, and that's kind of how Andy's done a great job, and we at CUPS is product adjacent, right? Because just because you don't have the product manager title or product owner title, like you could still be the product leader, the product champion, because you're product adjacent, because the credit union hasn't quite either established a FTE for the actual product name, or you just happen to be that person that's just the front runner. And so I really, that answer really resonates. I think one of the other things that I find, and you came from Google, so you got the big tech side of things. I have a restaurant background, so I was in a variety of backgrounds. I mean, a variety of restaurant pieces. One of the best tech companies in the world is Domino, in my opinion, because of all the enhancements and stuff that Domino's Pizza has done through the years with their tech, with their mobile, with some of their stuff. So, with that said, like what if you had the opportunity to fix a product today, handed the keys for a day, or to inverse that and say what product has been fixed recently that caught your attention? Like, it doesn't have to be in the fintech space, right? Like just in general, products in the world. Do you have anything that kind of resonates with you?
Ooh, it's a great question. I like that. I'm thinking about products. I'll tell you a very funny example. There's a book I'm obsessed with in product management, which is like a design of everyday things. And I was at a hotel for work recently, and every tap and every door was like confusing because it looked like a pull, but it was a push. Every knob was like, didn't know which direction it goes, where the hot water comes. Like the tap is the most confusing. It looks like a handle, but you have to push it away from you. And I'm just like, this is completely bizarre. And I was just like, I want to just fix everything in this hotel because it just annoyed the hell out of me. Because every piece of the bathroom was like not operating, obviously. Anyway, that's my very like obvious and silly example where I'm like, I will just fix this and then leave. I feel like there's this one famous guy who like joined Google for a week, fixed like one bug he had in Maps and then quit. I feel like I would do something like that for certain products where I'm like, why is this one thing always happen? Yeah. And I think, a very practical example is there's like, I use like ClassPass for workouts and like book workouts sometimes, and it doesn't store your filter settings when you switch off and come back to go look up, is this close to my office or not? And I'm like, I have to then search again. And I'm like, come on, guys. Like, it's a very solvable problem. I want to just like join you for a day, fix this one bug. I know exactly what I'll fix. They'll be like, cool, bye, I'm done.
Yeah.
That seems to happen a lot these days. I mean, these are different times. I've worked at a credit union with a lot of tech members who would message into us or call in with like, look, I could patch this for you today. Like, this one little thing is really driving me crazy. So that's a fun question. I'm glad we asked you, and we'll keep thinking about that too. Hotels are definitely like a nexus of like bad design decisions. It seems like sometimes.
Also, I'm like, why don't hotel TVs auto log you out of whatever service you logged into in most hotels? I'm like, I don't want my like YouTube credentials floating around. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. Endless opportunity. I was thinking, you brought up earlier CDFI. I was really impressed that you've been like working with these organizations and learning all our acronyms. Have you been doing anything kind of engaging with the changes in CDFI regulations and kind of staying with that? What is your conversation there been like?
Yeah, I'd say, it's been a learning process for me since I started Starlight. Like I knew the CDFIs but only as lending institutions. So I didn't realize there's an entire second half of CDFI, which is like traditional banks and credit unions who are serving the community. And also I think one thing we've learned is that there's two pieces to it. One is that there's obviously direct capital to go invest in the community, and there's like reserves that comes from CDFI that's really valuable. It allows credit unions to lend lower down the credit thresholds. And then the thing that's ancillary to that is products and services are necessary to serve the communities they're seeking to serve with CDFI. And so there's a huge opportunity with like what Starlight does to just like heavily overlap with CDFI credit unions. So we seek them out, offer them preferential pricing, make sure they get a chance to serve all their members no matter the size of the credit union. So that's like very practical from a business sense. We care a lot about it. As the regulations change, the compliance needs change and so on, we also think a lot of the value of Starlight is a very instant value exchange that allows us to collect data they need to submit to the regulators. So we can actually simplify a lot of credit unions' needs in like helping with compliance with NCUA and CDFI and the Treasury, because they need to know like recent income, understand households, understand where they are.
So Starlight is using member data to empower and help members find financial resources in a very credit union way, but also helping, you were saying, compliance and community impact managers collect the data they need to keep us mission focused, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting because we see this like the opportunity to kind of take the credit union mission, and everyone talks about people helping people, and like deliver that through technology at scale, but also solve a problem a lot of the product managers have, which is, hey, we need the right products for the right members, and for 30 to 70% of Americans, historically, credit unions are not at the moment able to serve their needs, and so if we can kind of solve that gap, and then also collect a bunch of data exhaust that's actually really valuable for proving our impact both for advocacy services, for NCUA, for CDFI. It's kind of like a win-win for both directly serving the members, but also helping the credit unions across their overall journey as well.
Well, there you go. There's a whole lot more to Starlight than we knew. I'm really glad we sat down with you today, Shreenath. Thank you so much for joining us and for your time today.
Thank you for having me, and so excited for what you all are building. And if anyone in Cups is excited to chat more, both about the product side, about Starlight or anything, I'm excited to speak to all of you.
Definitely. So we'll have your contact information available, and hope to talk to you again and just follow where Starlight goes next.
Amazing. Thanks so much.